I recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Griffith, for 5 minutes.
First, let me ask, do you believe, thank you, Mr. Chairman, do you believe that, that we're going to have more problems and more 202 orders issued as opposed to twice in 30 years because of the policies of the EPA? Ms. Hoffman?
I believe there is a potential for some emergency conditions to exist, but there are, if the plant operators truly be transparent and follow the procedures, then I think we can minimize any of those cases.
But because of the power plants that are run by coal that we've already seen that are shutting down, et cetera, is the reason that you made those statements and that you think there are going to be more 202 orders is because of some of the policies that are being brought about by the EPA in this, under this administration?
I think there's a lot of things occurring in the United States right now. We're trying to build transmission. We have an increased direction on natural gas, the building of natural gas.
And I wish
lines.
I had...
All of those have to be taken into consideration.
And I wish I had more time. And of course, we don't have the natural gas lines going to all the power plants that may close down. And so a lot of these power plants can't retrofit. That is also correct, is it not? Yes or no? And so part of your concern is the same concern that we heard from Mr. Moeller earlier, is that, you know, we're just not sure it's all going to get done, even in the best case scenario, it's all going to get done in time, that we're not going to have some situations where we have energy emergencies like Mr. Olson was talking about because of the policies and the timelines put together by the administration's EPA. Isn't that your, in the end, isn't that what you're saying, yes or no? That there's going to be some slippage because of some of these policies?
There are concerns of potential impact.
Okay, I'm going to take that as yes, and I've got to move on. Let me switch gears. Mr. Moeller, if I might, and you may have to get me answers later because I'm asking you about a bill that's not technically before us, but it does deal with hydropower, and I'll address it generally to both you and Mr. Wright. Does FERC currently require private property rights to be considered when issuing a license under the Federal Power Act? And what about when the Commission is reviewing shoreline management plan, the shoreline management plans? Now, let me give you some background so you understand. I represent the 9th District. My colleague, Robert Hurt, represents the 5th District of Virginia. He has Smith Mountain Lake. I have Claytor Lake. We have huge shoreline management situations, and there's a feeling by the folks there that the private property owners along the shores, and in the case of at least Smith Mountain Lake, because I used to do tidal work in that area, some of the owners actually own the underlying land, and AEP has the right to flood. And there are concerns about that. So the question is, because Mr. Hurd has a bill in to make it clear, but does FERC currently require private property rights to be considered when issuing a license?
Congressman, we've spent a lot of time on Smith Mountain Lake, but Mr. Wright is much closer to it than I am on a daily basis. I think we'll probably want to get back to you in writing, but
and that's fine, yeah. Because you should not have expected these questions today, and I appreciate that. But if you could get back to me, because my big concern is that if we don't take these things in consideration, some of the folks there are worried that their docks and maybe even boathouses may be impacted, and even though there may be the authority there, do we not have then a taking if the shoreline management plan does not take into consideration a taking for which either the government or, well, I guess it would be the government, would be responsible for then reimbursing these folks for the damage to their property, not only the damage of the taking of that particular dock or boathouse, but also the obvious then diminution in value of their property rights. So if y'all could think about that and get some answers back to me, I would greatly appreciate it. And I would ask also if you all believe that private property is in fact a local economic interest, which would be covered, I think, under some of the current language.
Private property rights are a very significant part of whenever we do a relicensing on shoreline management plans, and related to titles, they get very complicated. But I think we try to do our best to manage the various uses of a project that, of course, respects private property rights.
And I appreciate that. Last but not least, I think the bill we have before us is a good step on small hydro power generation, which is interesting. It's not in the plan along with coal. You know, it's kind of interesting. I've got coal and I've got hydro, and both of them are not considered all of the above by the administration. Can you tell me what are the biggest barriers to greater hydro power development in the United States? Either one of you can take it. Yeah.
Right now, I think one of the biggest barriers to licensing are probably the mandatory conditions we have from other state, federal, tribal. We're compelled under the Federal Power Act to include mandatory conditions from the land management agencies, Fish and Wildlife Service, National Marine Fisheries Service. We have to wait on Clean Water Act permits that are delegated to state governments. Even exemptions, the conduit exemptions, the 5 megawatt exemptions are subject to mandatory conditions from state and federal fish and wildlife agencies.
Thank you very much. And regrettably, my time is up. Mr. Chairman, if you want to give Mr. Moeller time to respond, I'm happy with that, but my time is up.
Your time is up.
I yield back. Thank you.